No one bid on the human Runt, so the Empress took him for free. If you enjoy this channel, please check to see if you're subscribed. The suppression field hummed like a dying star, casting pale blue light across Colt's shoulders. He didn't flinch. The restraints, 3-inch thick bands of what the Ethelguard called sci-forged steel, bit into his wrists and ankles, but he'd felt worse. The high-spire security auction hall stretched before him, a cathedral of chrome and floating crystal where the galaxy's elite came to purchase problems they couldn't solve themselves. Colt wasn't battered, his beard was wild, sure, and his standard-issue gray coveralls were stained with sweat, but his eyes were steady. He watched the guards, tall, willowy things with skin like opal, shift nervously when his gaze passed over them. They could feel it even through their telepathic nets. He was thinking about the weakest points in their formation. 10 minutes, maybe 8 if he pushed it. The suppression field would fail first. It always did when subjected to sustained bioelectric interference. Humans ran hot. Overseer Zarn floated onto the platform, his elongated form draped in what looked like liquid mercury. His voice carried through the hall without speakers, projected directly into the minds of the assembled bidders. Lot 47, Zarn announced, his mental tone dripping with distaste. Human, designation Colt 772, captured during the Fringe conflict. Documented defects include complete telepathic nullification, extreme caloric requirements. He paused, letting the crowd absorb the financial horror, an unusual skeletal density that limits standard transport configurations. The crowd stirred. Colt could see them even without turning his head, high lords in their floating thrones, merchants with too many eyes, military contractors whose species he couldn't name. They looked at him the way Earth's old aristocracy once looked at pit bulls. Dangerous, expensive, ultimately disposable. Starting bid, 50 credits. Silence. Zarn's mental voice tightened. 40 credits. Note that the suppression field costs 12 credits per hour to maintain. This is a waste of time, someone projected from the back. The creature eats more than it's worth, better to process it for organic compounds. Colt smiled, just a slight curve at the corner of his mouth, but enough. He felt the temperature in the room drop, not literally, though he was putting out enough BTUs to warm the platform. Metaphorically, they hated when the assets looked back. 0 credits. The voice cut through the telepathic chatter like a blade through silk. Every eye turned. Empress Kaliria rose from her throne and rose and rose, 7.5 feet of luminous pink skin wrapped in fabrics that seemed woven from starlight. Her violet eyes didn't glow, they pulled light, bending it around her like gravity-bent space. Zarn's mental voice stuttered. Your Majesty, I don't, this asset requires. I am aware of his requirements, Overseer. Kaliria's mental projection was crystal clear, but Colt noticed she actually spoke aloud, her voice like wind chimes in a cathedral. I claim his contract, 0 credits, the suppression field expense ends now. The field died. Colt felt it wash off him like water, that horrible pressure lifting from his shoulders. His muscles didn't bunch, he didn't attack. He just stood there, rolling his neck once, twice, feeling vertebrae pop. 8 minutes, he'd been right. But this was better. Every guard in the hall had weapons trained on him, energy lances, neural disruptors, things that bent space and made matter scream. Kaliria descended from her throne, actually walking instead of floating, her bare feet silent on the auction floor. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Colt could feel the coldness radiating off her skin. Their species ran at different temperatures. She studied him, head tilted, and he felt something brush against his mind, not intrusive, just curious, testing. It slid off, it always did. Her eyes widened just a fraction. Fascinating. Your Majesty, one of her guards began. She raised one elegant hand, release his restraints. But now, the bands clicked open. Colt rolled his shoulders, feeling the blood return to his hands. He met her eyes, had to look up to do it, which was novel, and saw actual curiosity there, not fear, not disgust, curiosity. You bought yourself a problem, he said. His voice felt rough in the crystalline space. Perhaps, Kaliria replied, or perhaps you did, we shall see. The shuttle interior was excessive even by alien standards. Walls of what looked like blown glass, seats that conformed to bodies without touching them, ambient light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Colt sat in the only seat that didn't adjust for him. They'd had to bolt down a cargo restraint, and watched Empress Kaliria watch him. Her guard stood at maximum distance, which in the shuttle's cramped quarters meant about 6 feet. Not enough. Colt could close that gap in under a second, and they knew it. Their hands hovered near weapons that probably wouldn't fire in the enclosed space without killing everyone aboard. Amateur hour. You may relax, Kaliria said. She'd taken a seat across from him, those impossibly long legs folded with geometric precision. The restraints will remain inactive during our flight. Appreciate it, Colt leaned back. The cargo restraint groaned. Got anything to eat? The temperature in the shuttle dropped. Not metaphorically, Colt watched condensation form on the nearest guard's armor. Kaliria's violet eyes had gone flat. You were purchased less than 10 minutes ago, she said, each word perfectly enunciated, and your first request is food. Your boy back there mentioned I'm an expensive asset, high caloric requirements. Colt scratched his beard. Figure if you're investing 0 credits in me, might as well know what you're getting. I eat about 6,000 calories a day, more if I'm working, stakes ideal. I'm not picky about the cuts. Silence, the guards looked like they were trying to become one with the bulkheads. Kaliria stared at him, and Colt felt that presence again, sliding across the surface of his thoughts like oil on water. She was telepathic, clearly, but whatever frequency she broadcast on didn't match his receiver. He just sat there waiting. You're serious, she said finally. Dead serious. Also, if we're being transparent, what's the oxygen mix in here? Standard atmospheric for Ethelgard biology. Nitrogen, oxygen, trace compounds. Oxygen percentage. 18%. Thought so, little light won't kill me, but I'll underperform. 21% is baseline for humans. You want me functional, that's something to consider. One of the guards made a sound like grinding glass. Kaliria raised a hand and he fell silent. She leaned forward, close enough that Colt could see the way light moved across her skin, not reflecting but refracting like she was made of crystal all the way down. Cold radiated off her in waves. His breath didn't mist, he ran too hot for that, but he could feel the temperature differential. You are not what I expected, she said softly. Yeah, Colt met her eyes. What you expect, gratitude, couple of yes, your majesty responses, maybe some cowering. Something along those lines, yes. Then you bought the wrong human. He kept his voice level, conversational. I was 10 minutes from breaking out of that auction house on my own, 8 maybe if I pushed it. Suppression fields fail when subjected to sustained bioelectric interference. Human nervous systems run hot and inconsistent. We scramble your tech eventually, but breaking out would have been loud, messy, and I'd have had no intel on where I was or how to get off station. He shrugged. This seemed cleaner. The silence stretched. Kaliria's guards had gone from nervous to terrified. She studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read, not anger, not quite fascination, something in between. Then she did something that made every guard reach for their weapons. She reached out and touched his arm. Her hand was cold, not corpse cold, but close. Her fingers wrapped around his forearm. She had the reach for it, and Colt felt her squeeze experimentally. Testing, her eyes widened. It's dense, she whispered. Your muscle tissue, it feels like armor under the skin. How is this possible? Gravity, Colt said. Earth's a heavy world. We evolved to carry weight. He flexed, just enough for her to feel the muscles shift. What you folks do with telekinesis and energy fields, we do with leverage and bone. She didn't let go. Her thumb traced the line of an old scar, white against tan skin. And this silence in your mind, I can't hear you at all. That bother you? No, her voice was barely audible. It's the first quiet I've experienced in 20 years. She withdrew her hand and the temperature in the shuttle stabilized. She gestured to one of her guards who looked like he'd rather eat broken glass. Bring him food, protein-dense, actual meat, not synthesized. The guard hesitated. Your Majesty, the expense. I said now, Captain Kalen. The captain fled. Kaliria settled back in her seat, that crystalline gaze still fixed on Colt. Outside the shuttle's viewports, stars streaked by in the familiar pattern of FTL travel, going somewhere, probably somewhere complicated. What am I to you? Colt asked. Kaliria smiled. It was a small thing, barely there, but genuine. I purchased you to insult High Lord Vax at tomorrow's court session. He believes I'm too delicate to make hard decisions. Bringing a human to court seemed appropriately offensive. And now? Now I'm wondering if I accidentally bought a weapon. She tilted her head. Tell me, Colt 772, do you consider yourself a weapon? I consider myself practical. He met her eyes. You point me at a problem, I solve it. You feed me, keep the oxygen where I need it, and don't try to get in my head, we'll get along fine. He paused. Also, it's just Colt. The rest was their designation, don't use it. Very well, Colt. She tested the name, her accent making it sound almost musical. Welcome to my service, try not to eat the furniture. No promises. Despite everything, the situation, the alien Empress, the fact that he was somewhere in deep space with no backup, Colt smiled. This was going to be interesting. The imperial court looked like someone had weaponized architecture. Spires that shouldn't be physically possible reached toward a ceiling lost in artificial nebulae. The floor was transparent, crystal suspended over what appeared to be empty space, probably some kind of energy field, but the effect was vertiginous. High lords drifted between conversation clusters on personal gravity fields, their bodies adorned with metals that didn't exist in nature. Colt walked, his boots struck the crystal floor with dull thuds that carried in the space like heartbeats. Every step announced his presence, heavy, grounded, solid. The Ethelgard didn't walk when they could float, walking was for primitives. He counted exits, 3 main, 2 service corridors, 1 emergency evac panel that they probably thought was hidden. Guard positions, 47 visible, probably twice that concealed. Weapons, energy-based, useless in close quarters. They were used to fighting at range, where their telekinesis and shields could control the battlefield. Caleria glided beside him, not floating, he noticed, but walking on an energy platform that kept her feet just above the floor. A compromise, she wore something that looked like woven moonlight, fabrics that shifted with every movement. Her violet eyes surveyed the court with practiced disinterest. Remember, she murmured, pitching her voice low enough that only his ears caught it, you are here to be seen, not heard. High Lord Vax will attempt to provoke you. Do not give him the satisfaction. Define satisfaction. Violence mostly, overt aggression. He wants me to look foolish for bringing you. Got it, no violence. Colt's expression didn't change. What about implied violence? Use your discretion. The court parted before them like a wave. Colt could feel their stares, not hostile exactly, but calculating, measuring. They looked at him the way engineers looked at a machine, wondering about tolerances and breaking points. He'd seen that look before on a dozen worlds. It never ended well for the engineers. High Lord Vax occupied the center of the court like a spider in a web. He was tall even for an Ethelgard, maybe 8 feet, with skin that shifted between silver and gold depending on the light. His robes were excessive, layers of fabric that moved independently, probably controlled by microkinetics. His eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, fixed on Colt with undisguised contempt. Empress Caleria, he projected, his mental voice silk over razors. How progressive of you to bring a pet to court. Caleria's smile could have cut glass. High Lord Vax, I see your fashion sense remains as subtle as ever. Are those new robes, or did your old ones finally achieve sentience and flee? A ripple of amusement passed through the nearby nobles, actual amusement, not the polite kind. Vax's skin flickered toward the red end of the spectrum. He descended from his floating platform, touching down 10 feet from them. His eyes swept over Colt, dismissive. A human, he said aloud, his actual voice thin and reedy. The fringe species. Tell me, creature, do you understand what's being said, or should I project more simply? Colt scratched his beard. I understand fine, nice robes, you got a license for all that fabric. Dead silence, someone in the back made a sound like a stifled cough. Vax's skin went full red, a flush that started at his hairline and spread down his neck. His hand rose, fingers spread, and Colt felt pressure, not on his body but at his body. Telekinesis. The air itself tried to shove him backward. Colt leaned into it, his boots good Earth-standard combat boots rated for 2G environments dug into the crystal floor. He slid back 3 inches, maybe 4. The pressure built, and he could hear the telekinetic field whining like an overtaxed motor. His teeth ground together, his muscles bunched. He did not move. Vax's 3 eyes widened, the pressure cut off abruptly, and Colt rolled his shoulders, feeling joints pop. That's an interesting trick, he said conversationally. Feels like standing in a stiff wind, we get those on Earth, I've stood in worse. Impossible, Vax's voice had gone thin, you should be the kinetic force alone. Yeah, about that. Colt stepped forward, 1 step, just 1, but it closed 2 feet of distance, and every guard in the immediate vicinity went tense. Your physics work different than mine. You push things with your mind, they move because they're light and you've got leverage. Me, he tapped his chest. I'm dense, gravity's friend, you want to move me, you're gonna need more than party tricks. Caliria's hand touched his elbow, light touch just enough to communicate, enough. Colt stopped, but he didn't step back. He held Vax's stare and he watched the High Lord's skin cycle through 3 colors before settling on a mottled purple. Caliria, Vax said, his voice pitched for the entire court, your pet is disruptive. Perhaps it should wait in the kennels. Perhaps, Caliria replied, her voice honey-sweet, you should refrain from assaulting my guests with telekinesis. It's terribly gauche, Vax, even for you. The assembled nobles made a collective sound, part gasp, part laugh, all schadenfreude. Vax's hand twitched, and for a moment Colt thought he'd actually escalate. Then the High Lord turned, his robes flaring dramatically, and glided back to his platform. This isn't over, he projected. Looking forward to it, Colt said. They found seats, or rather, Caliria found a seat, and Colt appropriated a cargo container that someone had tried to disguise as modern art. The dinner portion of the dinner party began, floating trays of things that looked like food if you squinted, served by attendants who moved like they were underwater. Everything was delicate, precise, quiet. Colt ate like a human. He didn't mean to be disruptive, but he also didn't particularly care. His hands were big, the utensils were designed for species with different proportions, so he improvised, he chewed, he made sounds. At one point he had to clear his throat, and the noise carried in that crystalline space like thunder. An Ethelgard noble 2 tables over looked physically ill. You're enjoying this, Caliria murmured. Little bit, Colt admitted. He bit into something that tasted like chicken but definitely wasn't. These people look at me like I'm gonna start throwing feces. Figured I'd give them a show. You're deliberately crude. I'm deliberately human, there's a difference. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. They hadn't provided napkins, another oversight. They want primitive, I'll show them primitive. Primitives survive, primitives adapt, primitives win. Caliria studied him, her violet eyes unreadable, then so quiet he almost missed it. Good. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze of uncomfortable stares and whispered mental conversations that slid off Colt like water. He could feel them trying to read him, to get inside his head and understand what he was thinking. They failed, they always failed. His mind was a black box wrapped in bone and stubborn biochemistry. By the time dessert arrived, some kind of crystallized sugar sculpture that probably cost more than his entire military pension, High Lord Vax was staring at him with undisguised hatred. Colt smiled back, friendly-like. He had a feeling tomorrow was going to be interesting. The grand gala made the dinner party look like a modest gathering. Every High Lord in the Ethelgard Empire had converged on the spire, their entourages creating a floating garden of luminous skin, impossible fabrics, and enough telekinetic energy to warp local space. The ballroom stretched 300 feet on each side, its walls composed of shaped force fields that showed the stars beyond. Music played not through speakers but through direct mental projection, a symphony that bypassed ears entirely. Colt couldn't hear it, just saw people swaying to silence. He stood near Caliria's table, dressed in what the imperial tailors had managed, black pants that fit his frame, a shirt that didn't quite button right across his shoulders, and boots they'd given up trying to replace. He looked like a bouncer at a very expensive club. The effect was not accidental. You're scowling, Caliria observed. She sat with perfect posture, her dress tonight a cascade of silver that puddled on the floor like liquid metal. Does the music displease you? Can't hear it. Her expression flickered, surprise then something like sympathy. Ah, the mental projection, I forget your limitations. Not a limitation, just different. Colt surveyed the room with practiced efficiency, saw 3 of Vax's people move position in the last 5 minutes. They're forming a perimeter around the main power junction. Caliria's gaze sharpened. You're certain? Yeah, also your Captain Kalen hasn't checked his secondary weapon in 40 minutes. His primary's still charged, but if he needs a backup, he's gonna fumble. Colt shifted his weight. Something's wrong, can't place it, but... The lights died. Not dimmed, died. Every luminous panel, every personal shield, every floating platform cut out simultaneously. The music stopped. The mental projection ceased, and in that sudden, absolute darkness, Colt heard something he'd never heard before, Ethelgard screaming. Not aloud mentally, a psychic wail that made his teeth ache even through his natural shielding. All around him, tall, elegant bodies collapsed like marionettes with cut strings. They hit the floor, actual physical contact, probably the first time in decades, and gasped, struggling, drowning. Colt's eyes adjusted, human eyes built for hunting in Earth's twilight. He could see shapes, outlines, and he could see Caleria, one hand pressed to her chest, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Her skin had lost its luminescence. She looked dimmer, smaller, dying. Caleria, he dropped to one knee beside her. She was cold, colder than before, like all the heat was bleeding out of her. What's happening? The ether, she gasped. Each word seemed to cost her. The ambient field, it's gone. We need it to. Hearts don't pump blood without, she shuddered. Dying, we're dying. Around them the darkness moved. Colt heard the unmistakable sound of hydraulics, mechanical systems, not telekinetic, armor, heavy footsteps, and lights harsh and white cutting through the dark in lance-straight beams. Void siphon active, a voice announced, not projected, spoken aloud through speakers. Ether field suppressed, all targets neutralized. Not all, Colt said quietly. He stood in the beam of the nearest light. High Lord Vax rose from where he'd been kneeling, a small device glowing with its own internal power strapped to his chest, a personal ether cell. His skin had dimmed, but he was functional, alive. Behind him, 10 figures in armored suits moved with mechanical precision, each carrying weapons that looked designed for close combat. Blades, kinetic projectiles, things that worked without the ether field. Vax's 3 eyes found Colt. Even in the dim light, his expression was pure triumph. The human, he said, I was hoping you'd survive. I want you to watch your Empress die, knowing you're too primitive to. Colt cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed in the silent ballroom. Finally, he said, a fair fight. Vax's triumphant expression flickered. What? You heard me. Colt rolled his neck, feeling vertebrae pop. His body temperature was rising, not panic, just combat readiness. Adrenaline. His muscles were fully oxygenated, his heart rate steady at 60 beats per minute. He'd spent 20 years training for environments exactly like this. No power, no backup, no advantage except what he carried in his meat and bones. Your people need magic to fight, telekinesis, energy shields. You've been fighting with cheat codes your whole lives. He smiled. Me. I'm analog, baby. An analog doesn't need batteries. One of the armored figures raised a weapon, some kind of kinetic rifle. Colt moved, not teleporting, not flying, just moving, fast, efficient, the product of muscle and training. He crossed 10 feet before the weapon discharged, the rounds sparking off the floor where he'd been. His hand closed on the barrel, wrenching it aside. The metal groaned. He drove his elbow into the helmet's faceplate and something inside crunched. The figure dropped. Kill him, Vax shrieked. The kill team charged, 9 armored soldiers, each carrying blades and firearms, moving with mechanical precision. They expected helpless targets, aristocrats who'd never thrown a punch. They got Colt. He'd learned combat on a dozen worlds, against enemies that ranged from barely sentient to hive minds that thought in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. But they'd all shared one thing: they obeyed physics. Mass times acceleration equals force. Leverage multiplies strength. And human kinetic energy, when applied without energy shields to dampen it, was devastating. Colt caught a blade on his forearm. The armor saved him barely and drove his fist into the soldier's hydraulic hip joint. The suit seized. He kicked, boot meeting knee, and physics did what physics does. The joint bent wrong. The soldier went down screaming. Another came from his left. Colt didn't block. He redirected, using the soldier's momentum against him. The armored figure stumbled, and Colt's boot caught him in the back, driving him face-first into a support pillar. The pillar was decorative, crystal over steel. The pillar won. Impossible, Vax breathed. You're just one. I'm human, Colt said. He was breathing hard now, sweat sheeting his skin. We've been killing each other with rocks and sticks for 10,000 years. You really think your tin suits scare me? 3 soldiers converged. Colt grabbed a fallen blade. The weight was wrong, the balance unfamiliar, and improvised. He wasn't a swordsman, he was a brawler. The blade became an extension of that, blocking, striking, leveraging. One soldier's hydraulic line split, spraying lubricant. Another took the pommel to his helmet's sensor cluster. The third got Colt's boot through his chest plate. They fell back, the remaining soldiers, 4 now, regrouped near Vax, their weapons trained but hesitant. In the harsh light of their suit lamps, Colt knew what he looked like, covered in hydraulic fluid and blood, breathing hard, eyes bright with adrenaline. A monster, a nightmare, an animal. He smiled. Your move. Vax's soldiers didn't charge again. They'd learned. Instead, they formed a defensive line while their lord backed toward the ballroom's main exit, his personal ether cell casting a sickly green glow. Around them, the grand gala had become a tomb. hundreds of Ethelgard nobles lay gasping on the crystal floor, their elegant bodies failing without the energy field that sustained them. Colt didn't pursue, he turned back to Caleria, dropping to one knee beside her. She'd managed to prop herself against an overturned table, but her skin had gone almost gray. Her breathing was shallow, irregular. Her violet eyes tracked his movement with effort. "Colt," she whispered, "you needn't to run, Vax will seal the exits." "Yeah, probably." He pulled off his shirt, not much but better than nothing, and wrapped it around her shoulders. She was so cold, like holding a corpse. "Can you walk?" "No, can barely move, my limbs," she shuddered. "We're not built for this. Without the ether field, our bodies shut down to preserve the core. I'm fading." "I get it, evolutionary trade-off. You folks optimized for energy manipulation, skimped on the biological redundancy." He looked around. The ballroom had 3 main exits, all sealed now. Heavy blast doors had dropped into place when the power died, probably a security protocol. The service tunnels, though, I saw maintenance access near the east wall. "Guards won't cover it, wrong status level. Can you hold on for 5 minutes?" "I can't." "Not asking if you can walk, asking if you can hold on, yes or no." Her eyes focused on him, some of that imperial steel bleeding through the pain. "Yes." "Good enough." Colt scooped her up in a fireman's carry. She weighed maybe 90 pounds. The Ethelgard were built tall and thin, all their density in different places. He adjusted her weight, settling it across his shoulders, and started moving. The service tunnel entrance was hidden behind a decorative screen that depicted some kind of historical scene in holographic detail. Now it was just dead plastic. Colt shouldered through it, the screen cracking, and found the access panel. Biometric lock, naturally, also dead. He punched it, not elegant but effective. The panel cracked. He punched again and the metal housing bent inward. Third punch and something gave. The door hissed open on mechanical backups, revealing a tunnel barely 5 feet tall and lit only by emergency strips that cast everything in red. "Undignified," Caleria murmured against his back. "Alive beats dignified." Colt ducked into the tunnel, immediately having to hunch. His shoulders scraped the walls. Caleria's weight settled across his back and he could feel her trembling, not fear, shock. Her body was shutting down. He started running. The tunnels were a maze, service corridors designed for maintenance drones and low-status workers. They branched and twisted, and Colt navigated by the simple principle of up. The spire was exactly that, a vertical structure. The throne room was at the top. If he could reach it, he could activate the emergency ether generators that probably existed somewhere in the Imperial quarters. Behind them, alarms began to wail, not psychic projections, actual physical klaxons. Vax's forces were coordinating, they'd have night vision, they'd have numbers. But they'd also have to move through tunnels designed for species smaller than humans, and Colt had 3 advantages. He could see in the dark, he didn't need to coordinate with anyone, and he was motivated. "Colt," Caleria's voice was barely audible over the alarms. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Saving me. You could leave, find a shuttle, escape." "Could," Colt agreed. He took a corner at full speed, boots hammering on metal grating. His calves were burning, crouched running was hell on the legs, but he didn't slow. "Won't though." "Why?" "Because you're the only person in this entire facility who looked at me like I was a person instead of a problem." He felt her fingers clutch weakly at his shoulders. "Also, you fed me steak, that buys loyalty." A sound that might have been a laugh, but it died in a cough. Her skin was freezing now, leaching heat from him even through his remaining clothes. He could feel her heartbeat against his back, too slow, too weak. Her species ran on energy the same way humans ran on oxygen. Without it, they suffocated. The tunnel opened into a junction, 3 ways, all leading into darkness. Colt paused, listening. Footsteps echoed from the left, heavy, mechanical, at least a squad. Right was quiet. Straight ahead led to what looked like, he sniffed, burnt carbon, kitchen exhaust. He went straight. The deep storage preservation level sprawled across the sector, designed to feed an army of aristocrats who barely ate. Now they were dark and silent, just the emergency lighting casting everything in blood red. Colt lowered Caleria to the floor as gently as he could, propping her against a storage unit. She was unconscious now, her breathing shallow. He pressed his fingers to her neck, pulse was there, barely. "Hang on," he told her, "I've got an idea." The kitchens had everything he needed. Cleaning supplies under the main prep station, accelerants in the torch fuel storage, metal containers, and, critically, a walk-in freezer with a heavy steel door. Colt worked fast, his hands moving with the muscle memory of too many improvised situations. He mixed compounds that humans had been using for violence since before they had fire, measured by eye and experience. The result wouldn't win any chemistry awards, but it would burn hot and throw force in one direction. He heard the footsteps coming, louder now, coordinated. They tracked him here. Good. Colt grabbed the freezer door. It was heavy, commercial-grade steel designed to withstand decades of use. The hinges shrieked as he tore it free, rivets popping, metal groaning. He hefted it, maybe 80 pounds, 3 feet by 6 feet, cold enough that condensation formed on the surface. Perfect shield. He dragged it back to where Kaliria lay, positioning it between her and the main entrance. Then he crouched, holding the door like a riot shield, his makeshift explosives within arm's reach. Colt, Kaliria's eyes had opened, just slits. What are you? Something primitive, he said. Stay down. The kill team burst through the kitchen entrance, 6 soldiers in full armor, weapons raised, moving in perfect formation. They swept the room with tactical lights, clearing corners, advancing with mechanical precision. Colt waited until they were 20 feet away, then he threw his first improvised bomb. The explosion lit the kitchen like a sun-going nova, not huge but bright and violent, all that chemical energy converting to heat and pressure in a fraction of a second. The concussion wave hit the lead soldiers and their formation broke. In the chaos, Colt charged. The freezer door absorbed 3 kinetic rounds before the 4th punched through. Colt felt the impact like getting kicked by a horse, but the door held. He slammed it into the nearest soldier, 80 pounds of steel meeting armor at full speed. The soldier went down. Colt dropped the door, grabbed a fallen weapon, and used it as a club. This was combat without ether fields, without telekinetic dampening, without the safety net of civilized warfare. This was brutal, direct, and over in 30 seconds. When it ended, Colt stood in the center of the kitchen, breathing hard, surrounded by disabled soldiers. None dead, he didn't need the complication, but they wouldn't be fighting anytime soon. He collected a handful of their ether cells, the small power sources they used to stay functional, and returned to Kaliria. She was staring at him with something between horror and awe. "You're bleeding," she said weakly. "Little bit," he looked down. One of the rounds had clipped his side, not deep but messy. "Had worse. Can you absorb energy from these?" He held up an ether cell. "It's designed for personal systems, but," she reached out, her fingers trembling. When they touched the cell, it began to glow. Color returned to her skin, just a shade, her breathing steadied. "Good." Colt looked at the freezer door, then shook his head. "Too heavy, can't climb with it." He dropped the steel slab, then strapped Kaliria to his back, this time more securely. "Now comes the fun part, we're going outside." The climb lasted 25 minutes. Colt counted each handhold, each shift of weight, each moment his fingers found purchase on cooling fins designed for heat dissipation, not climbing. The wind screamed across the spire's exterior, trying to peel him off like old paint. 40 stories of vertical darkness, with nothing but grip strength and stubbornness between them, and a fall that would last long enough to regret. Kaliria clung to his back, her arms wrapped around his neck. The ether cell he'd given her kept her conscious, but barely. She felt every muscle in his back work, every tendon stretch. His body heat radiated through his remaining clothes, the only warmth in the freezing wind. "Your hands," she whispered at one point, "they're bleeding." "Yeah," his voice was strained. "Metal's sharp, don't worry about it." "How can you? This should be impossible." "Probably." He found the next handhold pulled, his shoulders burned. "Tell you a secret, on Earth there's this thing called free climbing. People do it for fun, scale mountains with nothing but chalk and attitude." He grunted, shifting weight. "I always thought they were crazy. Guess I owe them an apology." When they finally reached the maintenance platform outside the Imperial levels, Colt's arms were shaking. He pulled them over the edge, rolled onto his back, and just breathed for 30 seconds. His palms were hamburger, blood mixing with hydraulic fluid and sweat. Every muscle in his body screamed. Colt, Kaliria had managed to sit up. Color had returned to her face, not much but some. That was the most terrifying experience of my life. "Yeah," he sat up, wincing. "For me it's maybe top 5, possibly top 3. He studied the access door, biometric lock, dead systems. "Need to get through this. Any ideas?" "The emergency protocols should allow manual override from inside." Colt punched the door, the metal dented. He hit it again, using the heel of his palm, putting his weight into it. The third strike broke something internal and the door hissed open on mechanical backups. The Imperial levels were dark except for emergency lighting. They stumbled through corridors lined with artwork worth more than planets, past chambers designed for functions Colt couldn't name. Kaliria leaned on him, still weak, directing him through the maze with whispered instructions. They found the palace kitchens, different from the service level, these ones designed for actual culinary art. Colt raided them methodically, protein bars that tasted like cardboard and luxury, water that probably cost more than his old salary, and most importantly, cleaning supplies. "What are you doing?" Kaliria watched him mix compounds under a prep station, his movements precise despite his injuries. "Making insurance," he measured by smell and color the way his old demo instructor had taught him 20 years ago. "Your boy Vax locked down the throne room. He's got numbers, weapons, and time. We've got me and whatever I can build." He sealed the mixture in a metal container. "Humans have been making things explode since we figured out fire. This is just refined." He pulled a heavy steel door off a walk-in freezer, the rivets popped like gunshots, and tested the weight. 80 pounds, good coverage, handles on the back, a shield, primitive but effective. Kaliria stared. "You're going to assault the throne room with cleaning supplies and a freezer door." "Little bit of napalm too, found the accelerant." He looked at her, serious. "Can you breathe without the ether field?" "For a time, my species, we can survive perhaps an hour in total suppression, but we're weak, helpless." "Good enough," he handed her his last ether cell. "When this runs dry, stay low, I'll handle it." She caught his wrist, her grip stronger now. "This is madness." "Yeah," Colt agreed, "but it's human madness, we're real good at that." The throne room occupied the spire's apex, a cathedral of crystal and force fields with walls that showed the galaxy itself. Under normal circumstances, it was accessible by 3 routes: the main elevator, the ceremonial stairs, and the High Lord's private platform. Vax had locked all 3. He hadn't counted on the exterior. Colt studied the spire's cooling system from a maintenance schematic he'd found, vertical fins running the structure's length, designed to radiate excess heat from the ether generators. They ran right past the throne room's exterior wall, less than 10 feet from the emergency access panel. "Absolutely not," Kaliria said when she saw where he was looking. "It's 30 feet, 40 tops. Vertical in hurricane force winds while carrying me." Her violet eyes were wide. "Colt, even for you. I just climbed 200 stories, this is nothing." He fashioned a harness from cable he'd torn from a maintenance closet, wrapping it around his chest and securing Kaliria against his back. "Besides, they're watching the doors. Nobody watches the outside, too crazy." "There's a reason for that." He grinned. "Yeah, nobody's crazy enough, lucky me." The exterior access opened onto screaming wind and infinite fall. The spire rose like a needle into darkness, and they were near its tip. Colt could see other towers in the distance, their lights dimmed by Vax's void siphon. The city station was dying around them. He stepped onto the cooling fin. It was 18 inches wide, angled outward at 30 degrees. Condensation made it slick. The wind tried to lift him like a sail. Kaliria's arms tightened around his neck. "This is insane." "Little bit," Colt agreed. He started climbing laterally, moving hand over hand along the fin's edge. Each shift of weight was calculated, precise. He checked the belt of explosives. That was all he had now. Gravity had demanded he leave the shield behind. His makeshift bombs were secured to his belt. Everything had to balance. Below them, nothing. Above them, the throne room's crystal wall glowed with faint internal light. Vax's personal ether cells, probably keeping minimal systems online. 20 feet, 15. His hand slipped, just for a second, just one hand, but Kaliria gasped and his heart rate spiked, and for one eternal moment they were balanced on nothing but 3 points of contact and momentum. Then his fingers found the edge, gripped, held. "Fuck," he breathed. "Language," Kaliria whispered, but there was no heat in it. She was watching his muscles work under his skin, fascinated despite the terror. The way they bunched and released, the precise biomechanical efficiency of a body built by gravity and refined by violence. "How is your grip strength sufficient to?" "Evolution, we used to swing in trees, 10 feet. Also spite's a great motivator." The emergency access panel was right where the schematic promised, a small hatch designed for exterior maintenance. Colt braced himself, got one arm free and punched it. The crystal cracked, he hit it again, third strike and the panel shattered inward. They tumbled into darkness, landing hard on throne room carpeting. Alarms shrieked, physical ones, Vax's security system detecting the breach. Lights snapped on, harsh and white. They were in a gallery overlooking the main floor, 30 feet up. Below, Vax stood surrounded by his remaining kill team, 8 soldiers, all armed. The High Lord's 3 eyes went wide as he saw them. "Impossible," he breathed. "You climbed the exterior." Colt stood scanning the room. He grabbed a heavy ceremonial shield from a display suit of armor near the door, decorative but thick bronze, better than nothing. Blood dripped from his torn hands, his clothes were shredded. He was covered in hydraulic fluid, sweat, and determination. "Yeah," he said, "humans are good at impossible, it's kind of our thing." Vax's kill team opened fire immediately. 8 kinetic rifles, coordinated volleys, professional execution. Colt raised the freezer door and felt the impacts like hammers, boom boom boom, rounds punching through steel but losing momentum. He was already moving, charging down the gallery stairs, using the door as mobile cover. "Target his legs," Vax shrieked. "He can't shield everywhere." They adjusted fire. A round caught Colt's thigh, tearing through muscle. He stumbled, caught himself on the railing, kept moving. Pain was just information. The body could work around information. He reached the main floor and threw his first bomb. The container arced through the air, struck the floor near the left flank, and detonated. Not a huge explosion, couldn't risk bringing down the throne room, but enough. Fire and pressure. The soldiers scattered. Colt charged through the smoke. The freezer door caught the first soldier's rifle, ripping it from his hands. Colt drove the door's edge into the soldier's chest plate. The armor cracked. A second soldier came from the right. Colt pivoted, using the door as both shield and weapon, slamming it into the soldier's helmet. The faceplate spiderwebbed. "He's just one man," Vax screamed. "Kill him." They tried. 6 soldiers converged, abandoning formation, just overwhelming force. Colt dropped the freezer door, too cumbersome now, and fought with hands and feet and elbows. This was combat without grace, without art. Just mechanical violence, each strike targeting joints and sensor clusters and weak points in armor. A blade scored across his ribs. Colt grabbed the wielder's wrist, twisted, and felt something snap. He kicked another soldier's knee backwards, head-butted a third hard enough that his skull rang. But there were too many. They dragged him down through weight and numbers, pinning his arms. One soldier raised a rifle, point-blank range, center mass. "Wait," Vax said. The soldiers froze. The High Lord descended from his floating platform, actually walking now, his personal ethicell struggling to maintain his telekinesis in the suppressed field. His skin flickered between colors, rage and triumph mixing, his 3 eyes fixed on Colt with pure hatred. "I want him to watch," Vax said. He raised one hand toward where Kaliria crouched behind an overturned throne. "I want him to see his Empress die, knowing he failed." Telekinetic pressure built around Kaliria. She gasped, clutching her chest. The ethicell had run dry. Without the field, her heart was struggling. Vax's power, amplified by his personal cell, wrapped around her like a fist, squeezing. "No," Colt said, not loud, not a scream, just a statement of fact. "You can't stop this, human. You're pinned, helpless. Watch her die, knowing your primitive strength wasn't enough." Colt stopped fighting the soldiers holding him. Instead, he drove his weight downward, pulling them off balance. His legs bunched, his core engaged, and he launched himself forward, dragging 2 armored soldiers with him, pure leg strength overcoming their mass. He broke free, his hand closed on the freezer door. His last improvised bomb was still strapped to it. He hurled the entire assembly across the throne room, putting everything into the throw, deltoids, triceps, core rotation, legs driving through the floor. The door flew like a frisbee, spinning, and struck Vax's personal ethicell dead center. The cell shattered, the bomb detonated. Vax screamed as the energy feedback surged through his nervous system, not fatal but devastating. He collapsed, his telekinesis cutting off instantly. Kaliria gasped free. The soldiers released Colt, turning toward their fallen lord. Mistake. Colt didn't stop. He crossed the distance to Vax in 4 strides. The High Lord looked up, his 3 eyes wide, and tried to muster power, some last defense, some desperate attack. Colt head-butted him. No technique, no elegance, just 220 pounds of human moving at full speed, skull meeting face. The impact echoed in the throne room like a bell. Vax's eyes rolled back. His skin flickered through every color simultaneously, then went gray. He dropped. Silence. Colt stood over the fallen High Lord, breathing hard, blood running from a cut on his forehead. The remaining soldiers stared, their weapons lowered. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Colt turned to where Kaliria sat against the throne. "You alive?" Yes," her voice was shaky. "Colt, your leg." Yeah, noticed. Help me restart whatever generator controls the ether field. These people need it or they're all dead. The ether field came back online in stages, first a trickle, then a surge, then the full ambient hum that the Ethelgard needed to survive. Throughout the spire, hundreds of nobles gasped as their hearts remembered how to beat, as warmth returned to their cold flesh. The floating city stabilized. Lights flickered to life. In the throne room, Caleria stood. Color had returned to her skin, not just returned, but intensified. Her violet eyes blazed. She looked at the scattered kill team, at the unconscious Vax, at the devastation Colt had wrought, and something in her expression hardened. Captain Kalen, she projected, her mental voice ringing through every conscious mind in the spire. Attend me, now. The captain of the Imperial Guard arrived within minutes, looking haggard but functional. His eyes went wide at the scene, the demolished throne room, the disabled soldiers, Colt sitting against a pillar with makeshift bandages wrapped around his leg. Your Majesty, we tried to reach you, but the systems were down and... High Lord Vax attempted a coup, Caleria said, her voice cold enough to frost steel. He deployed a void siphon, killing dozens and attempting to murder me personally. His kill team is here, he is here. She gestured to Vax's unconscious form. Take him to the deep cells, maximum security. He will face tribunal. Yes, Your Majesty. Kalen gestured to his guards. They moved to secure Vax, struggling with the High Lord's considerable mass. And the human. Caleria's expression shifted. She looked at Colt, really looked at him. He was a mess, blood-soaked, bruised, his hands torn raw, but his eyes were steady, watching the guards with that same calculating intensity he'd had in the auction house. The human, she said slowly, saved my life, multiple times. While every Ethelgard in this facility was helpless, he fought, he climbed, he improvised weapons from cleaning supplies and kitchen equipment. Her mental projection carried to every conscious mind in the spire. He did what we could not. Silence. Kalen looked uncomfortable. Your Majesty, regulations state that combat assets must be. He is not an asset, Caleria's voice cut like crystal. He is my ward. Anyone who challenges this will answer to me personally. Am I understood? Yes, Your Majesty. Get medical personnel here, human-compatible supplies. She moved to Colt's side, kneeling despite her station. Can you walk? Give me a minute. He looked at his bandaged leg. Round went through muscle, missed the bone. I've had worse. You've said that several times. I've lived an interesting life. He met her eyes. You good. I'm alive because of you. Yeah, well, he shrugged, wincing. You fed me steak, told you that buys loyalty. Despite everything, she smiled, a real smile, not the political mask she wore for court. I believe we should discuss your future. You've proven yourself valuable. Valuable enough to get the oxygen mix fixed. That 18% is still bothering me. I'll have it adjusted immediately. Medical teams arrived, actual doctors, not just energy healers. They looked at Colt with professional concern, scanning him with devices that made worried sounds. His physiology confused their instruments. Eventually, they just bandaged what they could see and injected him with something that probably wouldn't kill him. He requires rest, the lead physician projected. Significant tissue damage, blood loss, possible fractures. I'm fine, Colt said. You're objectively not fine, Caleria countered. You're going to Medical Bay and you're staying there until cleared. Can't Vax had allies, they might. I will handle Vax's allies. Her voice carried absolute authority. You have done enough, more than enough. She touched his shoulder gently, carefully. Let me protect you for once. He studied her, then nodded. One condition. Name it. Feed me real food, not that synthesized garbage. If I'm gonna heal, I need protein. Done, she stood, addressing the medical team. Whatever he requires, spare no expense. To Kalen, postguards, no one enters his quarters without my explicit permission. Your Majesty. That wasn't a request, Captain. They moved Colt to quarters in the Imperial Wing, actual quarters, not a cell. Soft surfaces, windows showing the recovering city, air that tasted like someone had adjusted the oxygen mix. He collapsed onto something that approximated a bed and was unconscious within seconds. 3 days later, Colt stood in the Imperial Court wearing armor they'd made for him, black composite plates over flexible mesh, designed by engineers who'd studied human biomechanics with the intensity of people who'd watched one human dismantle their entire security apparatus. It fit perfectly, moved with him, and had attachment points for weapons he hadn't requested but appreciated. Kaliria had summoned the High Lords, all of them, every noble, every merchant prince, every political player in the Ethelgard Empire. They filled the court to capacity, their luminous forms creating a sea of nervous color. She entered from the high throne approach, wearing battle dress, armor made of woven light metal, practical rather than decorative. Her violet eyes swept the court, and Colt watched nobles flinch from her gaze. She changed. The coup attempt had burned away something soft, leaving tempered steel. Colt walked beside her, not behind, not ahead, beside. His hand rested on a kinetic pistol they'd given him, human-designed, recovered from some military archive. Every High Lord's eyes tracked him, calculating, measuring, afraid. They reached the throne. Kaliria turned to face the court, and her mental projection filled every mind. 3 days ago, High Lord Vax attempted to murder me and seize power. He deployed a weapon that suppressed the ether field, rendering every Ethelgard helpless. She paused, letting that sink in. Every Ethelgard except one individual in this facility remained functional. One individual fought through Vax's kill team, carried me to safety, and ultimately defeated the coup. She gestured to Colt. This individual, the human you mocked, the Runt purchased for 0 credits. Uncomfortable silence. Colt stood at parade rest, his expression neutral. Let them look, let them calculate. I have learned something valuable, Kaliria continued. We Ethelgard have grown dependent on our advantages, our telekinesis, our energy manipulation, our ambient field. We have forgotten that the galaxy is vast and not everything bends to our power. Her eyes found specific nobles. Some would call the human primitive, a beast, an animal. I call him adapted. While we gasped and died in the dark, he thrived. She descended from the throne platform, stopping beside Colt. Effective immediately, Colt is my ward, elevated to high court status with full rights and protections. He answers to me and I to him. His counsel carries the weight of imperial decree. The court erupted in mental projections, not words but feelings, outrage, fear, confusion. Kaliria raised one hand and silence fell like a hammer. Furthermore, she projected, the definition of Runt has been updated. It no longer means weak, it means underestimated, and underestimation, as you have all learned, can be fatal. Colt felt eyes boring into him from every direction. Some calculating, some hostile, most simply afraid. He didn't react, just stood there, hand on weapon, radiating quiet competence. A High Lord near the front, ancient, his skin like hammered copper, finally projected, Your Majesty, with respect, is it wise to elevate a predator species to high court? His biology is incompatible with our culture. His biology, Kaliria interrupted, saved your life. When the field dropped, you couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't fight. He could do all 3. If that's incompatible with our culture, perhaps our culture needs adjustment. She turned to Colt and her expression softened just slightly, just enough for him to see. Do you accept this position? Colt looked at her, then at the court full of aliens who'd bought and sold humans like livestock, then back to her. One condition, he said aloud, his voice carrying in the crystal space. Name it. I work for you, not them. He jerked his chin toward the assembled nobles. They want something, they go through you, and if you're ever in danger again, they don't get to tell me how to handle it. A slight smile touched her lips. Agreed. Then yeah, I accept. She extended her hand, a human gesture learned from watching him. He took it, careful of her cold skin, and they shook. The court watched, silent, as Human and Empress formalized the strangest alliance in Ethelgard history. As they turned to leave, Colt leaned close and whispered, This is gonna make me a target, you know that, right? Yes, Kaliria murmured, but they'll have to go through me to reach you, and I am significantly more dangerous now that I know what real strength looks like. That a threat? A promise, she smiled, genuine and fierce. Welcome to the Imperial Court, Colt. Try not to break too many High Lords.